Good evening, Sierra Leone. Good evening, Kono District. Good evening to all Sierra Leoneans and that are at home and abroad. And this message is going to every African, to the entire African continent. We are going to discuss today one very big question: why African institutions struggle to broker peace and how to fix it. We've seen several times African Union will send peacekeepers, ECOWAS will send peacekeepers, or every other part of Africa will contributing to peacekeeping in Africa. But many times we've seen these peacekeepers don't really succeed in actually bringing peace into those conflict zones. Examples are Somalia, Sudan, Congo. We've seen several times African Union has contributed a lot to try and see how they can stop these conflicts, but they have never been able to do so. Also, we've seen how international organizations are influencing conflicts in some parts of Africa or in every part of Africa, how they influence conflicts just for the sake of their own personal benefits. But today we want to discuss the peacekeeping that was recently brokered between Congo and Rwanda by the President of United States, President Trump. But before I go there, I want us to listen to this video. This is a message that is sent to the entire African continent by a member of parliament in the Gambia. Let's watch this.
But I have a concern. Before setting up a unit or anti-coup d'etat unit in ECOWAS, isn't it time that the African head of states or the ECOWAS head of states look into the reason why there are coup d'etats? What are the root causes of coup d'etats? Let them put their house in order first before they set up an anti-coup d'etat unit. Let them put their house in order. And I believe their house is not in order. This unit is set up to defend them and to protect them only, nobody else. What is more coup d'etat than your national constitution gives you 2-term limit, 5 years, 2 terms. After serving 10 years, you want to change the constitution for another term. Is that not a coup d'etat? Because you feel you have the powers to do that. The soldiers have the powers to coup d'etat. That is also another coup d'etat. And they are living with them there. They are there. In the name of civilian, putting on multi clothes, calling yourself a Democrat, when you lose all the resources of your country, mislead people, torture them, imprison them, burn their businesses to us, and you call that a Democrat? Or a civilian rule and an illegally elected government? The leaders must stop lying to their electorate first. They must stop the corruption. They must stop looting our resources. They must understand that they are not a better citizen than anybody. They are given a responsibility, a role to play, to help develop the countries and make sure that there is peace and tranquility. And respect the constitution of the country. But this is not happening. Example is this government. This government has lied to people in 2016 that they are going on for
the
years.
Gambian government, because it's a Gambian government, is really referring to the
Who are they to tell people that we are going for 3 years?
Who said they were going to stay
Were they forced to say that?
And then they never did. They
went out home and lied to everyone. When the people started reminding them, this is what you promised us, they threw tear gas on them. And the president is bragging, yes, when I threw tear gas on them, they never came back. Does that not anger the citizens You throw tear gas on your people. Some of them are wounded and you stand out there and bragging that I throw them a tear gas. They never come back. That alone can anger the citizens. You promised the people you will have a security sector reform. It's never happened. The civil service sector reform is never happened. The Giant Commission was violated before the end of the commission. When you take all the assets of the former president, and now you are busy buying assets, what is that coming? I thought they should have learned. Or they would have learned from this. Unfortunately, they have not learned. So before you create a unit to go against any attempt of coup d'etat, put your house in order. Stop lying to your electorate. Stop lying to your citizens. Stop looting the resources of your country. Stop corruption in your country. And then you can talk about anti-coup d'etat. When Alpha Conde was killing his people in Guinea, after serving 10 years, he said it was not enough. I want to serve another term. During the process, so many Guineans were killed. And I did not see any E.S.K was going there or condemning him. You know why?
What this member of parliament is saying here is that African Union, ECOWAS, and all blocs in Africa, they are like kind of favoring certain presidents who overstay their power, and then they don't want to do the same thing for those who are just coming in. And according to him, he's actually speaking to the ECOWAS, who is planning to set up anti-coup d'etat unit. This anti-coup d'etat unit is meant to encourage African countries not to actually organize coup against their democratically elected presidents. But this member of parliament in the Gambia is actually asking a question. If you really don't want soldiers to undergo or to demonstrate and set coup against their sitting government, let the governments themselves do what is right so that they will not anger the military, they will not anger the citizens, and then things will go on very well. But before setting up a committee to look into coups, you should first of all look at the actions of the governments, the sitting governments in every part of Africa. What are they doing that is not correct, so that you will not encourage or motivate people to rise against the ruling of the sitting governments. Let's continue to listen.
Because Guinea was too big for them, or Alpha was dancing to their tune. Because I think that was why the small Gambia was surrounded all sides by soldiers and guns in 2016. Because Gambia was small, or Gambia is a small country, and Jammeh was not dancing to their tune. After the presidential election in Guinea, more than 300 Guineans were butchered, killed. No ECOWAS condemned him. No African Union condemned him. Instead, they pick up their phones and say, Monsieur le Président, félicitations, congratulations. That is the fair game that is happening in Africa. They can condemn Mali, they can condemn Guinea, they are soldiers. But the one in Chad, who has been given a red carpet for the African Union, was never condemned, and he's a soldier too.
What he's just saying here is that the president in Chad is a military person, and but African Union is not saying anything towards that. Also, if you look at Paul Biya, you look at the number of years he has been in power, African Union has not done anything towards that. You look at Museveni in Uganda, you look at other parts of Africa where presidents have overstayed, manipulated the constitution, African Union has not done anything. So this gentleman is actually speaking to that effect.
But I have a concern.
Let's continue to listen.
That is also another coup d'etat. And they are living with them there. They are there. In the name of civilian, putting on mufti clothes, calling yourself a Democrat, when you loot all the resources of your country, mislead people, torture them, imprison them, burn their businesses to us, and you call that a democracy? Or countries, and make sure that there is peace and tranquility, and respect the constitution of the country. But this is not happening. Example is this government. Does that not anger the citizens? You throw tear gas on your people. Some of them are wounded, and you stand out there and bragging that I throw them a tear gas. Your days are coming. I thought they should have learned, or they could have learned from this. Unfortunately, they are not learning. So before you create a unit to go against any attempt of coup d'etat, put your house in order. Stop lying to your electorates. Stop lying to your citizens. Stop looting the resources of your country. Stop corruption in your country. And then you can talk about anti-coup d'etat. When Alpha Conde was killing his people in Guinea, after serving 10 years, he said it was not enough. I want to serve another term. After the presidential election in Guinea, more than 300 Guineans were butchered, killed. No ECOWAS condemned him. But the other soldiers are condemned for their attempt, or for their act. Where is the fairness in ECOWAS or in the African Union? They are not representing us. I believe they are representing themselves. So we are calling them to remember that power belongs to the people.
So, in his last statement there, before any African bloc, before any African institution condemn coup d'etats, condemn anything that is going on against sitting governments, what this gentleman is saying is that they should clean their own houses first before they go after military people who are organizing coup d'etat. Nobody is encouraging coup d'etats, but we also have to look at why these things happen and how do we stop them. So I'm going through some points here that I put down. The reasons why African leaders are not able to bring peace in conflict zones in Africa. Number one would be political will and unity. Many African leaders talk peace, but when it comes to action, national interest comes first. And if leaders don't stand together, regional organizations cannot speak with one loud voice, and without unity, there is no strong peace. Secondly, dependence on external funding. The AU and ECOWAS and all other African blocs depend heavily on Western donors for peacekeeping money. When someone pays the bills, they influence the decisions as well. So this weakens Africa's independence and slows down the actions that they would want to take. Next would be weak enforcement of power. African blocs can issue statements, they can issue resolutions and communiques, but can they really enforce them? That's another question to ask. Most times, no, they don't. Sanctions are very, very weak. Peacekeepers deploy very, very slowly. Armed groups and governments don't actually feel the pinch or the pressure. So anybody who is actually fighting against a sitting government, these sanctions that are put by African blocs, African Union, ECOWAS, SADC, they really don't work because they are very, very weak. Bureaucracy and slow response also is another reason why African countries or African Union is failing to succeed in their mission. While Western powers act quickly, African institutions move through committees, panels, and long meetings. By the time decisions are made, conflicts have already escalated. So they have to also look into that. Too much bureaucracy in discussions, decision makings are very, very slow, and then actions are taken very late. So by the time they want to act, conflict zones have already been suffering, people have been suffering, and then they cannot succeed. Next is the lack of trust among African states themselves. Some governments believe their neighbors use regional bodies to chase political advantage, and this lack of trust makes mediation very, very difficult. In contrast, outsiders appear neutral even when they are really not. So let's go to also the next point I have here is rivalries and hidden agendas among Africans themselves, among the Europeans or American peacekeepers. So African countries sometimes support different factions in a conflict. So also um, the European Union or the Americans, they also have interest groups in conflicts. So how can an institution broker peace when its own members fuel the war? So we go on to the next point that I have here, Western leverage and power. So let's be very, very honest. Western nations have economic muscles, military influence, and diplomatic pressure. They can threaten sanctions, cut aids, or mobilize international partners very fast. That gives them negotiation power that African blocs struggle to match. And these are the reasons that I have down for why African Union and other blocs in Africa cannot really bring peace in time so that people or innocent people don't suffer. So how do we fix this one, or how does the African blocs, African Union fix this one? Firstly, there has to be financial independence. Africa must fund its own peace missions. Once we stop depending on donors, we will negotiate from a position of strength. Also, a strong African peacekeeping force, a rapid response African standby force, well funded, well trained, and ready to deploy, will change the game. Peace must not wait for paperwork. That is very, very important. Stronger sanctions and consequences must also be implemented. African institutions must say, if you start war, you face real punishment. No more empty threats, no more selective enforcement. Next, the African Union and all blocs in Africa should be bold with honest leadership. Peace requires leaders who speak truth to power, leaders who put the continent above personal politics, and leaders who are not afraid to pressure warlords or presidents. Also, to fix this problem, reducing rivalries between states will be very, very imminent. Africa must stop fighting proxy wars. Once neighbors stop undermining each other, the continent can negotiate as one family. Also, cutting bureaucratic delays will help a lot to make peace actions productive. Streamline the AU and ECOWAS or any other African bloc. Less paperwork should be implemented, more actions should be taken. Less talking and more doing. Next, we will go to building trust with the people themselves. Local communities, civil society, women groups, and youth must be involved in peace process. When people trust the process, peace will last longer. And next, we think strengthening early warning systems. Prevent conflict before it explodes. Use technology, community networks, and intelligence sharing to react very, very early and on time. Finally, I would have this one. African unity and a single strong voice is very, very much demanded and required. When Africa speaks with one voice, the world will listen. When Africa is divided, outsiders take over the mediation. So for African Union to really strengthen itself, like I have listed in all my discussions here, financial independence is very, very important. If they depend too much on international organizations to fund their peacekeeping, then these international organizations will always be making decisions. We've seen what has happened in the Sahel region when they came together and drove France out of their countries. So we've seen that they are now actually making productive use of their resources. So my final closing message will be this. Why can outsiders broker peace while African institutions struggle? It is not because outsiders are better. It is because Africa has the tools, the people, the wisdom, but not yet the unity. It does not have the strength or the independence needed to act swiftly and decisively. But the solutions are in the hands of the Africans themselves. With stronger institutions, financial independence, bold leadership, and unity, Africa can become its own biggest peacemaker. Until then, the continent will continue to rely on outsiders to solve African problems. At this point, I want to thank you all very much, and I want to encourage you to share the message, comment, and come back again next time. Sorry for the noise in the background, but again, I want to encourage my listeners, and if you have not subscribed to this channel yet, please subscribe. Thank you very much. This is David Bongo again, coming to you from KNN.